I remember that day so vividly, as if it's etched into my memory forever. My daughter and I were sitting in the living room, talking about something lighthearted, laughing, and just enjoying a rare, peaceful moment together. And then, out of nowhere, the world shifted beneath my feet. It started with a small, almost insignificant detail, something that didn't quite make sense. At first, I brushed it off, convincing myself it was probably just a misunderstanding, a minor mistake, nothing to worry about. But deep down, I felt that pit in my stomach, that creeping sense of unease that something was off. And then my daughter noticed it too. The way she looked at me, her eyes wide, her lips slightly parted, it was the look of disbelief, the same one I was trying so desperately not to show on my own face. I could feel her trying to process what she had just learned, and it was like watching a mirror of my own shock. The truth hit us both at once, in waves that left us speechless. My heart was racing, my thoughts scattered, and yet every instinct in me was telling me to stay calm, to hold it together for my daughter's sake. But the truth is, in that moment, holding it together felt impossible. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, to make sense of something that simply didn't make sense. And more than that, I felt an overwhelming surge of protectiveness for my daughter, this beautiful, innocent soul who was suddenly thrust into a reality that no child should ever have to face. It's strange how life can throw you into a storm when you least expect it. One moment, everything feels ordinary, safe, normal, and the next, the rug is pulled from under you. I could see the questions forming in my daughter's eyes, the unspoken words she didn't know how to articulate yet. And I realized that while I had been blindsided by this revelation, my daughter was seeing it unfold in real time, processing not just my reaction, but the enormity of what it meant for our family. It was a moment of innocence colliding with betrayal, a harsh lesson in the complexity of human behavior, and a test of resilience neither of us wanted, but both of us had to face. We didn't speak much at first. Words felt inadequate, almost disrespectful to the weight of what had been revealed. Instead, we held each other, drawing strength from that quiet connection, silently acknowledging the shock, the hurt, and the disbelief. In that silence, we both understood something profound. Life would never be the same, and yet, we could survive it together. That moment marked the beginning of a journey of uncovering truths, facing painful realities, and ultimately learning how to rise above them. And as I looked at my daughter, that same wide-eyed disbelief slowly transformed into a quiet determination, a shared resolve that no matter what happened, we would navigate it together. After that shocking revelation, the reality of betrayal started to seep into every corner of our lives, and I could see it reflected in my daughter's eyes. It's one thing to hear about someone's actions, to learn that they've done something hurtful, but it's an entirely different experience when it touches the people you love most. Suddenly, everyday moments felt heavier. The way he had behaved, the choices he had made, it wasn't just a personal blow. It was something that reshaped the sense of safety and trust that my daughter and I had taken for granted. I realized then how fragile the foundation of family trust really is, and how quickly it can be shaken when someone we love crosses lines we thought were untouchable. My daughter, in particular, struggled with this. Children have this remarkable ability to sense when something is wrong, even if they don't fully understand it. I watched her trying to piece together what had happened, trying to reconcile the father she knew with the actions he had taken. There were moments of confusion, moments of anger, and moments where the hurt was so raw, it felt like it might break her. And yet, through all of it, she was learning, in the most painful way possible, about the reality of human behavior, the reality that even those we trust the most are capable of choices that can hurt us deeply. What I had to do, as her mother, was navigate this delicate terrain with care. I couldn't shield her from the truth entirely because she deserved honesty, even when it hurt. But I also had to protect her from the full weight of betrayal, to help her understand that someone else's actions do not define her worth, her security, or her capacity to trust in the future. It was a balancing act, one that demanded patience, empathy, and a willingness to be vulnerable alongside her. I had to let her see my own emotions, my own pain, while also demonstrating resilience, strength, and the ability to respond with clarity rather than anger or despair. Every day became a lesson in navigating the ripple effects of betrayal. It was in the quiet conversations late at night, in the long walks where we processed our feelings, and in the simple gestures of reassurance that slowly rebuilt our sense of normalcy. I could feel her growing, even in the midst of pain, learning that betrayal is not the end of the story, but a chapter that teaches vigilance, discernment, and self-respect. And I was learning alongside her, discovering that while trust can be broken, the bond between a mother and child can endure and even deepen when tested. In those days, I realized that betrayal is never just about the act itself. It's about the ripple it creates in the hearts of those who witness it, those who love the ones involved. And seeing my daughter process, react, and begin to understand that became my guiding light, reminding me that our strength lies in how we face these challenges, not in avoiding them. Once the initial shock began to settle, my focus shifted completely to my daughter. Protecting her became my priority, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. I knew that while the world had thrown us into chaos, I had the power to create a safe space for her. A space where she could process what had happened without fear, without judgment, and without the weight of someone else's mistakes crushing her spirit. I realized that my own emotions, as raw and as intense as they were, could not overshadow hers. She needed a guide, a steady presence, someone who could help her navigate this storm without letting the storm consume her. It wasn't easy. Every action my husband had taken left a residue of uncertainty, questions, and fear that could easily seep into a child's mind. I remember sitting with her, talking in quiet tones late at night, letting her ask the questions she was afraid to voice during the day. She wanted to understand why someone she loved, someone she trusted, could act in ways that seemed so cruel, so selfish. I had to find the words carefully, balancing truth with reassurance, honesty with protection. I had to help her see that the wrongdoings of others do not define her world, do not diminish her worth, and do not dictate the love and safety that she deserves. I also learned that protection is not about shielding her from reality entirely. That might seem like the instinctual thing to do, but it would have done her a disservice. Instead, I focused on building her resilience, teaching her that while we cannot control the actions of others, we can control our response. I showed her that it's okay to feel hurt, to feel angry, and even to cry, but that those emotions should empower us, not trap us. I wanted her to know that we could acknowledge the pain, face it head on, and still move forward together with strength and dignity. We started small, creating routines and rituals that reinforced stability and safety. Things as simple as shared breakfasts, evening walks, and quiet moments together just to talk. These became anchors in a sea of uncertainty, reminding her that some things remained untouched by betrayal and that the love and presence of a parent is a constant that can weather even the worst storms. And slowly, over days and weeks, I could see her beginning to heal in her own way. Her eyes, once filled with confusion and doubt, began to regain clarity. Her laughter, tentative at first, started to return. I realized that by focusing on protecting her, truly being present, truly listening, and truly nurturing her, we were not just surviving. We were beginning to rebuild. That's the power of a parent's protection. It's more than shielding. It's guiding. It's teaching resilience. And it's showing that even in the face of heartbreak, love remains unshaken. Once the initial shock began to settle, my focus shifted completely to my daughter. Protecting her became my priority, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. I knew that, while the world had thrown us into chaos, I had the power to create a safe space for her, a space where she could process what had happened without fear, without judgment, and without the weight of someone else's mistakes crushing her spirit. I realized that my own emotions, as raw and as intense as they were, could not overshadow hers. She needed a guide, a steady presence, someone who could help her navigate this storm without letting the storm consume her. It wasn't easy. Every action my husband had taken left a residue of uncertainty, questions, and fear that could easily seep into a child's mind. I remember sitting with her, talking in quiet tones late at night, letting her ask the questions she was afraid to voice during the day. She wanted to understand why someone she loved, someone she trusted, could act in ways that seemed so cruel, so selfish. I had to find the words carefully, balancing truth with reassurance, honesty with protection. I had to help her see that the wrongdoings of others do not define her world, do not diminish her worth, and do not dictate the love and safety that she deserves. I also learned that protection is not about shielding her from reality entirely. That might seem like the instinctual thing to do, but it would have done her a disservice. Instead, I focused on building her resilience, teaching her that while we cannot control the actions of others, we can control our response. I showed her that it's okay to feel hurt, to feel angry, and even to cry, but that those emotions should empower us, not trap us. I wanted her to know that we could acknowledge the pain, face it head-on, and still move forward together with strength and dignity. We started small, creating routines and rituals that reinforce stability and safety, things as simple as shared breakfasts, evening walks, and quiet moments together just to talk. These became anchors in a sea of uncertainty, reminding her that some things remained untouched by betrayal, and that the love and presence of a parent is a constant that can weather even the worst storms. And slowly, over days and weeks, I could see her beginning to heal in her own way. Her eyes, once filled with confusion and doubt, began to regain clarity. Her laughter, tentative at first, started to return. I realized that by focusing on protecting her, truly being present, truly listening, and truly nurturing her, we were not just surviving, we were beginning to rebuild. That's the power of a parent's protection. It's more than shielding, it's guiding, it's teaching resilience, and it's showing that even in the face of heartbreak, love remains unshaken. Eventually, the time came when I had to confront him, not out of anger alone, but because the truth demanded it, because my daughter and I needed clarity, and because I refused to let confusion and deceit define our lives. Confrontation isn't easy. It's messy, uncomfortable, and sometimes frightening, but I realized that avoiding it only allowed the shadows of his actions to grow larger in our minds. So, I prepared myself, mentally and emotionally, to face the reality of what had happened, to bring hidden truths into the light, and to finally understand the full extent of his choices. When I approached him, there was a strange mixture of tension and relief. Tension, because no one wants to uncover betrayal face to face. Relief, because after weeks of wondering and worrying, the silence and uncertainty could finally end. My daughter watched from a distance, quietly, and I could see the mixture of fear and curiosity in her eyes. I had to remain strong, not just for myself, but for her, showing her how to confront difficult truths with courage, dignity, and composure. The conversation itself was surreal. Every answer he gave, every detail that came to light, added another layer of shock and disbelief. It was hard to reconcile the person I thought I knew with the reality that emerged. And yet, I also saw it as a teaching moment, a chance to model resilience and honesty for my daughter. I wanted her to witness that while people can make choices that hurt us, those choices do not define us, and the way we respond is what shapes our character and our future. As I listened, I felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, disappointment, but I also felt clarity. The confrontation brought closure to some questions and opened the door for reflection and understanding. I could see the pattern, the reasoning, and the consequences of his actions, and though it didn't excuse anything, it gave me the insight I needed to take control of my own life and my daughter's well-being. I realized that confronting the truth is not about revenge or humiliation. It's about reclaiming power, establishing boundaries, and ensuring that deception no longer has a hold on your family. Through that process, my daughter saw firsthand the importance of standing up for oneself, the strength it takes to demand answers, and the courage it takes to face uncomfortable realities head-on. She learned that confrontation isn't necessarily about conflict, it's about clarity, dignity, and protecting what matters most. And I learned, alongside her, that truth has a way of setting you free, even when it arrives wrapped in pain. By the end of that confrontation, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and empowerment. The road ahead wasn't simple, and the healing would take time, but the truth was no longer hidden, and we had faced it together. That moment marked the turning point, where confusion began to transform into clarity, and fear began to transform into determination. After confronting the truth, the next challenge was healing not just for me, but for my daughter. The shock of betrayal leaves marks that are not always visible, and I could see that she carried the weight of it in her expressions, her questions, and even in the way she hesitated to trust certain things again. Healing wasn't something that happened overnight. It was a journey, a series of small steps, moments of vulnerability, and shared experiences that slowly helped rebuild our sense of safety and trust. I realized early on that this process required patience, empathy, and consistency, because rushing it would only make the wounds fester instead of mend. We started by talking openly, even about the things that were hard to say. I let her voice her anger, her confusion, and her disappointment. I didn't try to fix her emotions or tell her to move on before she was ready. Instead, I listened, validating her feelings and letting her know that it was okay to feel hurt because those feelings were real and deserved acknowledgement. By doing this, I was showing her that emotional honesty is a form of strength, that acknowledging pain is not a weakness, and that healing begins when we face our emotions instead of burying them. I also focused on creating new experiences that reinforced our bond and reminded us of what could still be trusted ourselves, each other, and the love that had always been constant between us. We spent more time together in ways that mattered, small moments that carried big meaning, quiet walks, shared meals, late-night talks where she could ask anything without fear of judgment. Each moment was a thread, slowly weaving the fabric of our resilience. I wanted her to see that while the actions of others can shake us, they do not have the power to destroy the foundation of trust and love we build ourselves. Another part of the healing process was teaching her to set boundaries, to understand that while we cannot control the choices of others, we can control what we allow into our lives. I wanted her to feel empowered, to know that she could protect herself emotionally, and to carry that lesson forward in her own relationships. Through this, she began to see that healing is not passive. It is active, intentional, and deeply tied to self-respect and awareness. Slowly, I noticed changes. Her laughter returned, her confidence began to grow, and the fear in her eyes gave way to determination. She learned that pain does not define us, but how we respond to it does. And through this journey, I found healing too. We were learning together, becoming stronger not in spite of what happened, but because of it. We discovered that shared resilience can turn betrayal into a lesson, hurt into growth, and confusion into clarity. As we began to heal, I realized that the ultimate lesson was about empowerment and moving forward. It wasn't enough to simply survive the betrayal, to navigate the confusion, or to protect my daughter from its worst effects. We had to take the pain and transform it into strength to show ourselves that life doesn't have to be defined by the wrongs of others. I wanted my daughter to see firsthand that resilience isn't just enduring hardship, it's rising above it, taking control of your story, and refusing to let someone else's choices dictate your future. Empowerment starts with boundaries. I made it clear, in word and in action, that we would no longer be held hostage by fear, guilt, or manipulation. We learned to recognize what we would accept and what we would not. And, more importantly, my daughter saw that boundaries are not walls. They are the scaffolding that allows us to grow safely, to explore life with confidence, and to protect the most vulnerable parts of ourselves without shutting down entirely. In setting these boundaries, we reclaimed our autonomy, and with it came a sense of pride, dignity, and control that betrayal had momentarily stripped away. Moving forward also meant redefining what family, trust, and love looked like. It wasn't about forgetting what had happened or pretending the pain didn't exist. It was about embracing the lessons we had learned, acknowledging the mistakes made, and using them as a compass for how to navigate relationships in the future. I wanted my daughter to understand that the choices of others, no matter how shocking or hurtful, do not diminish our ability to love, to trust, or to live fully. We were learning to make conscious choices, to surround ourselves with integrity, and to nurture connections that reflect respect, honesty, and care. Every step forward was a declaration that we would not be defined by betrayal, that our lives could be filled with hope, joy, and possibility. I could see it in my daughter's posture, in her words, and in the quiet confidence returning to her eyes. She was learning that empowerment is not a single act, it's a mindset, a practice, a daily commitment to living authentically and courageously, even when the past has left scars. And as we moved forward together, I felt a profound sense of purpose. The pain that once seemed unbearable had become a teacher, showing us the depth of our resilience and the strength of our bond. My daughter understood that no matter what challenges life throws at her, she has the tools, the awareness, and the courage to face them head-on. We had turned a moment of despair into a foundation for growth, a lesson in strength, and a roadmap for living with dignity and clarity.